Alrighty, welcome back everyone. We just did a little bit of a college football 25 update. We are only a week out, so a ton of things coming out with player ratings, dynasty, road to glory, all of the things in between. So just cannot wait. It's getting very, very close. You can almost feel it. But let's get into this segment 5 here. And we're going to do a weekend wrap up. We did this on Monday, and this kind of probably going to be a new segment on Fridays around here just to get everyone up to date on all the little things that we missed throughout the week because it's nearly impossible to fit everything in, especially as we get closer and closer to season. But let's jump right in, and let's start with DJ Uiagalelei. This is a guy that transferred from Oregon State to Florida State this past season, and he has decided he is not attending ACC Media Days. Apparently, he turned down an invitation to go to ACC Media Days, and he did it because he feels the players that were on last year's team deserve to represent Florida State in Charlotte. And I think that just backs up exactly who he is. He has shown pretty much at every single turn the type of person that he is. He's a remarkable teammate. Every single person that has played with him has nothing but lovely things to say about the guy, and this is just another evidence of that. I think he's someone that, when you talk from a leadership perspective and someone that all of the players can follow, there's very few quarterbacks in the country that are quite on DJ's level. And, it might not be the most elite play at the end of the day, but off the field, he's just got to be one of the most incredible teammates. And it's obviously a very selfless thing for him to do, a very, very cool thing for him to do, because I agree with him. I do think that the players from a year ago that had that historic year and had one of the best years Florida State's had since 2013 in that incredible, or 2014, I guess, in some respects. But it's been quite some time, and celebrating those guys, letting those guys go to Charlotte and experience that is huge. So I understand that some people will be a little bit upset that we won't be able to hear from DJ, including myself. I'd love to hear from him and hear what he has to say, but we'll hear from him plenty throughout the season. No two ways about that. So I think this is a very, very cool gesture and kind of shows the connection that DJ and his teammates have really early on during his time at Florida State. So just an elite leader, and he shows that pretty much every single day. So really, really like this kid, and definitely something that made me like him even more. That's for sure. Then let's get into UCLA and some of these out-of-conference matchups. So UCLA and Cal have scheduled out-of-conference matchups for 27 and 28. I'm 90% sure. I believe those are the dates. And it left Georgia and Florida to find some replacements. And it opens up a debate that I've been talking about on here a little bit throughout the offseason where, first of all, the travel is just ridiculous. But on top of this, the out-of-conference scheduling is going to change. UGA replaced UCLA with Marshall. And this is just another example of how, with an expanded playoff, you don't really incentivize people to play those aggressive out-of-conference games, especially teams like Georgia who can roll through their schedule in the SEC anyway. If you go undefeated in those games, you have no problem. So you really have no incentive to put yourself in danger to lose that game and then possibly leave yourself out of the playoff later on. So this is something that I tend to believe is going to continue to happen unless we put in some type of uniform scheduling across the board. If that doesn't happen, then UGA is honestly probably right to schedule Marshall. It's frustrating, but at the end of the day, if they're not going to get rewarded for scheduling someone really tough, if they're going to possibly get beat and then get left out of the playoff at the end of the day, I'd much rather play Marshall and get that win and then move on to the SEC with enough buffers to get myself into the playoff. But from a UCLA and Cal perspective, this makes total sense. I absolutely love that they're playing. I think they're playing a number of years in a row over the next, 4 years. I think they're playing almost every year. And this is one that I'm not mad at these two in particular because they travel just ridiculous miles. I believe Cal is something like they traveled 29,000 miles this year during their away games, and that's just absolutely ridiculous. UCLA is something around 24,000. It's insane the amount of travel that some of these schools are going to have to endure. So if you can add an out-of-conference game that, for UCLA, they traveled to Hawaii this year. That's just ridiculous. But if you can swap that out for someone like Cal, or if you can swap out Georgia for someone like Cal, it just makes life so much easier. It makes life easier for the kids, for the coaches, for everyone putting together the travel schedules. Everything just becomes a lot more manageable. So that's obviously something that I don't love that some of these out-of-conference games are becoming a little bit tampered down by the expanded playoff, but the reality is when you're UCLA and Cal and you're asked to travel as much as they are, I can't necessarily blame them for doing that. And then finally, I want to get into, or I have a couple others, but I do want to get into a very, very interesting story that I had nothing about. I knew nothing about, and I very much wish I did. A Pittsburgh legend, Bobby Greer, the first black player to participate in the Sugar Bowl, has died at the age of 91. He was someone that started at Pittsburgh, got his first letter in 1953, and was a huge player on their defense for quite some time. As a senior, he was someone that led them to a 7-3 season, led the team in interceptions, a very, very talented guy, and got to a 1956 Sugar Bowl. That is where the interesting part comes in. They were playing Georgia Tech in this Sugar Bowl, and the then Georgia Governor Marvin Griffin sent a letter to the Georgia Board of Regents saying that they should refrain from participating in any racially integrated sporting events. Essentially saying Georgia Tech should not play Pitt. They would not play Pitt. They shouldn't. That would be against the rules, according to the governor. Everyone came out against it. Greer got very, very big time support from the players, the students at Georgia Tech. The president of Georgia Tech came out and rejected the governor's proposal and said that they were going to play that game, and they did. And Bobby Greer led both teams in rushing with 51 yards rushing, and he participated in the Sugar Bowl banquet that used to only serve white patrons at that hotel. So really, really cool. Just a remarkable story that I had no idea about, and something that I think everyone should know. So I'm very, very happy that I stumbled upon this, and obviously condolences going out to that family, but just a remarkable life, a really transformative life in this sport and in so many different ways. So obviously, thoughts and prayers go out to the Greer family, but he definitely left a very, very lasting legacy. There's no two ways about that. But just a remarkable story that it just really, really was really cool to read about that yesterday. But let's get into the SEC and a new sponsor that they're taking on. They have decided to add Southwest Airlines as the official airline of the SEC after signing a multi-year sponsorship agreement. That is very interesting. There's no two ways about that, but that's the reality of college sports now. Everyone's looking for that money any which way they can get it, including the SEC that has plenty of money coming in. I can promise you that. This is kind of an interesting one, though, because it does have kind of a sweepstakes, like some of this stuff tends to do, but it has a quote-unquote Flex Your Fandom sweepstakes, and it's a contest that will give them a getaway to the SEC Championship. So kind of a fun little thing that if you wanted to enter, by all means, absolutely do that. Also, Southwest has added some additional routes to some big-time games this season, including Georgia at Texas, USC at LSU, Bama at Wisconsin, Tennessee at Oklahoma. So they're getting a little special with this one. I very much like that. It's kind of a cool way to not only bring in a little bit more money for the conference, but also involve the fans, make it about the fans at the end of the day, and I think that's always a really, really cool way to go about it. So this is going to be kind of the new norm in college football in some respects. You're going to see a lot more of official airline of the SEC or official, insurance partner of the Big Ten, whatever it is. You're going to see plenty of that stuff coming forward, and it'll be really interesting. But there are big-time bills to pay. There's no two ways about that, and if Southwest can help them out, then the SEC will take it. There's no two ways. But let's get into the final one here. Monty Kiffin, the father of Lane Kiffin and a fantastic NFL defensive coordinator for a number of years, has passed away at the age of 84. He was surrounded by his family in Oxford, Mississippi, was very, very peaceful, but obviously this is Lane Kiffin's father. He has worked with Lane for quite some time at Ole Miss when he took over, and has been with Lane for a number of his stops throughout his college career because he's a darn good football coach. Kiffin had 30 years of coaching at the NFL ranks, was the longest tenured coach in Buccaneers history. He was with Tony Dungy for a number of years, John Gruden for a number of years, and is in that team's Ring of Honor. So an absolute legend down there in Tampa Bay. Was one of those guys that one of the best football minds of that time. There's no two ways about that. He was the head coach at North Carolina State back in 80 to 82, and then obviously has been an assistant at 3 different stops with his son, Lane Kiffin, especially at Ole Miss the last couple of years. So thoughts and condolences going out to the Lane Kiffin family, a true football icon. There's no two ways about that, and someone that was really just incredible in so many different ways and left a really lasting legacy, not only on college football, but on football as a whole. So obviously condolences going out to those that family, as well as the family of Bobby Greer, but it's a couple of really, really incredible men. There's no two ways about that. But that'll do it for this edition of the GSMC College Football Podcast, brought to you by the GSMC Sports Network. Thank you so much for tuning in. It means the world to us. Also, please remember to subscribe to the show, leave a positive review. It does make a huge difference. Also, follow us on Facebook, Twitter, TikTok, Instagram, all of the social pages you could possibly need for all of the content you could possibly need. We just have incredible people doing really, really good work across every single sport you could possibly want. So anything you need in the world of sports, we got you covered. Just come on over to GSMC. But thank you once again for listening, and I will see you guys on Monday.